Can't afford Netflix.
While smooth jazz plays in the background. Alright, I know we spent the last episode talking about serious-arty controversial films and talking about how they hold a mirror up to society and allow for the exploration of human condition, blah blah blah. And I stand by everything I said. But I also made the point that these movies aren't meant to be fun. In fact, most of them are pretty traumatic. So I think it's time for us to look at the other end of the spectrum. Let's raid the dollar bin, from a coronavirus-approved 1.5 metres of course, and get into it. Imagine this scene. A dark, dank hospital somewhere in Tahiti. Water is dripping from burst pipes. An old man is lying paralysed on a bed. He's just watched a film and he's shaken. Never before has he seen something of this brilliance.
What did you see, old man?
Godzilla. Godzilla. Godzilla.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present the first of many In the Defense Of episodes. Today, together, we're standing up for Godzilla. If you were to listen to other reviewers, you'd think that Roland Emmerich's 1998 blockbuster is a steaming pile of rubbish. Literally everyone hates on this film, and I don't get it. Look, generally speaking, the complaints boil down to the same kind of things. It's the bad monster design, poor pacing, terrible effects, and shoddy characters. So essentially everything. Now, I don't know what film these critics have been watching, because these are the exact things that I would actually highlight as strengths of the film. Let me explain. I don't like the design of the monster. In the lead-up to the release of this blockbuster, the buzz was huge. Literally, genius marketing led to entire buildings featuring banners stating, "He's bigger than this." When you went to buy your magic 2-minute beef noodles, you found they'd added Godzilla trading cards to their MSG. Every kids' magazine was plastered with movie-inspired covers. The posters were extraordinary. However, not everyone was pleased. Godzilla was of course originally a Japanese series of movies. In the original films, the titular monster was portrayed, a la Power Ranger style, by a man in a rubber suit walking through a miniature city in slow motion with copious amounts of smoke. An emphasis on low-angle shots made him appear huge. It's the same effect if you take your camera, put it down at someone's feet and look up at them, they're going to appear monstrous in size. But frankly, the figure of this Godzilla was that of a paunchy, pear-shaped set of overalls. A gigantic body with a tiny little head perched atop the recesses of where the human would fit. Nostalgia aside, let's be honest, it's not that great. The American Godzilla film is not meant to be a sequel to that Japanese series. It's a standalone reinterpretation, and yes, it does ignore the political and cultural undertones that made the original city-destroying giant radioactive lizard relevant to people of that culture. In much the same way, I guess, as the Europeans film we've spoken about in the past were desperate to make sense of the horrors committed during World War II, this too is a reflection of the devastating nuclear effects that ended the war. The American film isn't trying to do this. It's just meant to be a fun movie. That all said, if we can put the nostalgia aside, the 1998 design of the giant lizard is actually really good. In the opening of the film, sepia-toned footage of atomic testing rolls behind the credits. Shots of destruction are juxtaposed with shots of bearded lizards scurrying about in the Pacific Island. There's one particular image that stands out, a lizard poised upon a branch, ocean in the background shot from a slight low angle, looking out upon the incoming explosion. This is where Godzilla came from, and the appearance of the real lizard in this shot creates that clear link. The same boxy long face, the slow moving eyelids, the ridges of spikes across its head, the elongated body and muscular tail. This new Godzilla is actually based on a lizard. So when its true form is finally revealed, we already understand where that design has come from. It makes much more biological sense. Well, as much biological sense as a film like this can. Seriously, have a look at the pictures of Godzilla in this design and compare it to those of a bearded dragon lizard. It's spot on. That said, I do understand the desire for nostalgia, and it's worth noting that there are several very visual nods to the original. Right up until the full monster is revealed, he's exclusively shot from street level looking up. This of course gives the monster a sense of size and is a direct nod to the techniques employed by the original filmmakers to make their man in a suit Godzilla appear large. There is also a brief sequence where, whilst being attacked by the Army and Air Force, Godzilla roars over a burning truck. This causes flame to appear to shoot from his mouth. And again, this is a direct reference to the original series where the creature can project energy from his mouth. There is one thing that does suck about Godzilla though, and that's that the size is completely inconsistent. I can't defend that, it is all over the place. So yes, granted, this Godzilla does not look like the Godzillas in the parallel Japanese universe, but it's not meant to. It's a modern, realistic, different take on what the giant creature should look like. And I think it's pretty great.
This film is poorly paced.
Now, apparently this film is badly structured. It isn't. The film begins with a terrifying monster attack on a boat. We see the claws, we see the destruction, and we get a sense of its power, but that's it, we don't see anything else of it. A perfect way to introduce the monster. We are then into the orientation. We take a trip to the beautiful Kualoa Ranch in Hawaii, in this case standing in for both Russia and Tahiti, and we meet our lead characters, more on them later. We return to the original ship, which is now beached, and we get a sense of the size of the creature. And then we see more sea attacks, again with no monster reveal just yet. The film then moves on to New York, and finally, 25-ish minutes in, we get a look at more of the creature as its back spikes emerge from the ocean, destroying a fishing wharf. Cleverly designed shots allow the next 10 minutes of monster action to be both exciting, but also not yet reveal its full appearance. Excellent. More setup, new characters introduced, massive exciting battle, lots of comedy, and then at the midway point stakes are raised. The creature we discover is now pregnant. We then have a roller coaster ending. More action, some more emotion. By this point we actually care about the lizard, and the final sequence where we're introduced to the baby Godzillas in the underground is breakneck paced and super exciting, and it provides a nice contrast to the scale of the destruction outdoors. Bang, the end. The film doesn't let up. The stakes are consistently raised, the monster is revealed bit by bit, and just when we've seen it all, new monsters are introduced. Emotionally it works. It doesn't slow down, it builds all the way to the climax. Seriously, this is how a blockbuster should be structured.
The effects suck.
Okay, so this is a 90s film, and granted there are some moments that don't match up with what we'd expect to see nowadays. But here's the thing, I actually think the 90s were the best time in cinema for special effects. Let me explain why. Here's a bit of history. In the 1930s, King Kong climbed a building via stop-motion effects. In 1956, The Ten Commandments, Moses parts the Red Sea, which is actually a Paramount Studios parking lot, via a clever optical effect, reverse footage. In the 60s, we increasingly see rotoscoping effects, where lasers and even backdrops are painted onto the physical film. We also begin to see the early incarnations of blue screen and rudimentary animatronics. In the 70s, Star Wars. The use of miniatures is taken to the next level and combined with the aforementioned effects to create something that is completely new, astonishing, and world-changing. The 80s, the first basic use of computer-generated imagery in the Young Indiana Jones television series. Early 90s, Jurassic Park, the first proper use of CGI in a major film, and it was astonishing. By the late 90s then, filmmakers had in their arsenal a whole variety of different types of special effects, and this was a good thing. They were able to mix up the use of miniatures, CGI, animatronics, rotoscoping as they saw fit for each individual scene. Godzilla used all of these effects to great use, and it stands up today as a masterpiece of inventive filmmaking. Granted, it doesn't do anything first, but it does benefit and perfect everything that came before it. When we first see the ship Godzilla attacked washed up on the beach, the scale is astonishing. The ship glimmers where appropriate, the ropes and flags wave in the wind, and the colour is perfectly matched to the warm undertones of the environment. The ship is CGI, not that you know. Several scenes later, a fisherman runs along a wharf as behind him Godzilla streaks through the water, smashing the ramp up bit by bit and causing a gigantic wave to form in his wake. This is a miniature effect, with footage of a real, not CGI, a real human running superimposed on top. Extra water effects are added into the forefront of the frame to sell the illusion. Exceptional work. From behind a raised road, we then see Godzilla emerge onto land. Its colossal size meaning that the small lens employed captures only a flash of skin and motion, but nonetheless it astonishes the viewer with the creature's scale. It's all CGI, but it's used sparingly and knowingly. As the creature then stomps through the city, which is real by the way, real shots of New York are actually used for the background plates. They're not fake like in so many modern films. Godzilla then is digitally inserted on top, destruction elements like smoke and special effects are placed on top, and the composites, the colour grading and particle effects are extraordinary. intimate sequences between the lizard and human employed animatronics, or even appropriately constructed monster appendages. The baby Godzillas are largely real models. Best of all, the humans are real, not rubbery CGI computer overlay models. The environments are also mostly real, and the creature is brought to life in each scene in the most authentic way possible. Even the CGI is limited so as to not dull the astonishing spectacle when it is used. Honestly, this film is a masterclass in special effects done right. And for 1997, it has to be said that the CGI is really good. The creature's skin, though notably lower in resolution than what we're used to nowadays, has a sense of texture and elasticity. Godzilla moves fluidly and naturally, and best of all, he has the best sense of weight and presence of any CGI character outside the Transformers franchise. Honestly, this Godzilla feels more real than the dinosaurs of the modern Jurassic World franchise, and it's all down to the appropriate use of a diverse range of special effects by true artists. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach like modern blockbusters, in which we so often find the filmmaker frothing over their latest CGI action sequence where nothing is practical or real. The film's special effects then are astonishing, and not only do they stand up to this day, but they actually do it better than 90% of modern blockbusters, and the level of detail, like lights reflecting in Godzilla's eyes, are just proof that these artists cared.
These characters are shoddy and they don't explore the human condition.
Alright, I kinda get this one. Every single character is a stereotype, saying cliched things and providing appropriate exposition in order to further the narrative. I can't argue with this. But they are still likeable. Monster, the cameraman, has his own action figure for goodness sake. And I bought it. Matthew Broderick is, as always, likeable. 24's Aaron Pierce plays the type once again as the hard but wise general. The mayor, comically named Major Ebert, is given some thick rimmed glasses in what I'm sure is a nod to film critic Roger Ebert. He's a stereotypical douchebag politician who delivers one of the most knowing lines in the film whilst chastising the army. What's the matter with you people? You've done more damage than that thing has. Clever. He is also completely obsessed with reopening the city despite the clear danger for the sake of the economic functioning of the country. Now, when I first wrote this script, it was several months ago, but now recording this right in the height of the coronavirus tragedy, I can't help but feel this plot thread is particularly relevant and poignant. On behalf of TQ Talks, our prayers go out to this great city and its even greater people at this difficult time. We're all behind you, and we hope that your leadership make the best possible decisions about whether or not to reopen the city at this time. Now, upping the moron stakes in Godzilla is the misogynistic news anchor who gets what is probably the most macabre piece of foreshadowing in modern cinema history when he states, "What is described as the worst act of destruction since the Trade Center bombings has led to the greatest evacuation in our city's history." Yep, that one hurts nowadays. It's also worth pointing out that this is one of the last New York as a character films to feature the Twin Towers prominently. Now, I know this doesn't make the film good or bad, but it certainly does add to its interest factor. Finally, the most important character of all is Godzilla, and he's done brilliantly. We sympathise with him. His narrative of wanting to nest to lay his eggs, it's actually kind of touching. And yeah, he destroys things, but it's never malicious until he has no choice. We like this lizard, and that's a testament to his characterisation. So, granted, none of these characters are great, but they're all appropriately likeable or dislikable. They serve their purpose, and hidden amongst the exposition and carnage, there are actually some oddly poignant lines and moments. Basically, people, they are exactly what this film needs. No more and no less. So to slam the film in this regard is to misunderstand their function. And I still have a crush on Maria Patillo.
Me too. Conclusion.
I think then that the final thing to briefly mention is the movie's themes. They're not unique, and whilst the film doesn't carry the same weight as the originals in the post-Hiroshima landscape, the nods towards environmentalism, gender equality, and measured armed response are just as relevant today as they were 21 years ago. I know that having good, responsible themes doesn't make a movie good, but I think the way that they're explored here is subtle yet effective, a surprisingly delicate touch from the master of disaster movies. So there you go, a film slammed by everyone and so poorly reviewed that despite making tons of money, failed to produce the 2 planned sequels. Guys, it's a great film. It's a lot of fun, visually spectacular, quite intelligent even, when you look beneath the surface. So, for succeeding in its purpose and being really, really fun, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 from me. And there, I rest my case in the defence of Godzilla 1998.